I'm Dr. Parveen Babar. I'm working with Jawaharlal Nehru University as Deputy Librarian. Today, we will be discussing about the library legislation and the state policy for library information services. So, our objective of today's discussion will be to know about the state policy for library, state policy for the library and information services. We will be also discussing or understanding the need for the library legislation, and then we will move on to identifying various components which are available under the library legislation. We will be also discussing today about the various model acts and bills available for the library information science. So, to start with the introduction, there is a need for having the state policy of library information services. It is an essential requirement for the design and development of the public library network. When we have a public libraries, there is a network of it, so we will be requiring, and there will be an essential requirement for designing and development of these libraries. So, we need to know that library legislation is perhaps the best and assured way of providing public library services in a democratic and free society which we have. Like for India, we are a democratic and free society. So, the best way to have the assured public library services, the best of the public library services is to have through developing a library legislation. Now, an effective means for designing and developing a public library service is to have a network of the central points linking a number of activities. By this we mean we have the structure of such a network which can set a hierarchical tiers. Hierarchical tiers means that you have first step, second step, third step. So, there will be a hierarchical tiers of structure of network. Then the type of hierarchy reflects the administrative units for the revenue and state administration. We can organize with these tiers in a radical fashion where a state library will have divisional libraries, and each divisional library becomes a radial focus to the district library, and further each district library is connected to the taluks, block library, and each taluk and block library further becomes a focal point of village libraries. So, there is a hierarchical structure to control these libraries, and how we can do through the library legislation or state policy. Thus, to have an effective organization of a library network, we will have a configurational analysis and stimulations of the other administrative structures. So, this is how it works. When we talk about the library legislation, it is basically laying down of the structure of the public library. We are laying down the structure for the public library, and we are also having the constitution and functions of the library authority at the national, then we have the state level, then the district levels. So, all three will be taken care in the library legislation. So, it will also provide participation to the representatives of the public in the work, for the work of the public libraries at all levels. So, this is the basic idea behind having a library legislation. Now, moving ahead to the state policy for library or library information science services, library information services, as per the Constitution of India, the subject of library services forms the part of the state list. It has the state list whereas the subject of education is the part of the concurrent list. So, it means that when we talk about the library services, it is a state list, it comes under the state list, that means state has to take care of it. But when we talk about the education, it is on the concurrent list of the Government of India. So, it is obligatory on the part of the state governments or union territories to enact the laws for the library legislation. So that means whatever the libraries have to be taken for through will be taken for the state. It will be not taken by the center, but by the state policies. So before enacting any law, the states should need to have they need to frame a policy for the public libraries and implement it through the statutory provisions, that is State Public Libraries Act, or we have the various kind of developments and through the developments through the state level. We can see that various developed and developing countries have or already have their library legislation and adopted these kind of procedures in the past. Next is the UNESCO Public Library Manifesto, which came in 1994. The UNESCO Public Library Manifesto had clearly spelled a policy that it must be formulated, it must have a defining objectives, priorities and services in relation to the local community needs. So it says that a clear policy must be formulated, there should be defining objectives, priorities and services should be there in relation to the local community needs. It also, the UNESCO manifesto also proclaims the belief, it says that in the public library as a living, it should be as a living force for education, culture and information, and it should be an essential agent for the fostering of peace and spiritual welfare through the minds of men and women around the world. So UNESCO has already defined in its manifesto that there need to be a clear policy for the libraries, and UNESCO therefore encourages all the national and local governments to support and actively engage in the development of the public libraries. Moving ahead, there are certain areas under which state policy for library and information services work. Now these areas are very important in all aspects, that it gives a guidelines how the libraries will be working. So the first area is that public library should render service freely to all members of the community without any discrimination, irrespective of the caste, creed. The library service should be made available freely to all the members of the community. The public libraries are there which needs to serve the community in order to order of priority, like there are a hierarchy of order, like we have literates and neo-literates, then we have semi-literates, and the participation is the participants are in the form of non-formal education programs which are being taken care, and then there are people pursuing self-education, people interested in self-employment schemes, semi-skilled workers and the citizens. Then we have next priority comes for the children and the young people. Then we have casual readers, housewives, higher education and research. So there is a hierarchy where we need to prioritize the provision of the public libraries to these communities. The second area of state policy for library information service is for arranging free access to information, that they should act as an information centers. They should provide access to all the citizens for all type of information at all the levels, and provide information on local enterprises, associations, local interest groups, develop local histories, develop the community information services, and utilize the service of the whatever the systems like NIC, National Informatics Centers, and introduce the computer literacy and skills for achieving the speedy accuracy and efficiency in the service. So this is an area where the state policy works. Then we have the public libraries in a developing society. They should preserve the cultural heritage, which is very important, that the cultural heritage should be preserved, and it should provide access to all forms of cultural expressions, make efforts to foster intercultural dialogue, favor cultural diversity, and support the oral tradition of the country. Further, we have the federal country, where like India, which needs to provide a two-tier public library system in a state, that is one at the state level as an apex body, and the other at the district level, for spreading its activities to the village level with necessary infrastructure. Another area is that the state government will formulate a comprehensive book selection policy for the public libraries in the state. So, what kind of books have to be procured, that has to be taken through the state policy. The public library should acquire all kinds of document, including the multimedia or whatever the new resources are coming up for the benefit of the communities. In case of human resources, another very important aspect or the area for the state policy is the human resources. The government should constitute a state library and information service cadre, which includes subordinate service unit for this purpose. Recruitment rules and for the said service and the condition of the service will be a subject to the provision of the Article 309 of the Constitution of India. There is a provision under the Constitution of India under the Article 309, which gives which provides the service condition of the employees. So, under this article, the rules and regulations can be defined for the library employees. So, another area under this state policy is that the state government will also impose a cess. This is very important area, that the cess has to be imposed. Cess is like the educational cess. It is a surcharge. It is a surcharge on the on all possible items, such as we have house tax, property tax, vehicle tax. So, a cess is charged on these taxes to have the financial accumulation for the benefit of the libraries. So, this area is covered under the state policy. Then finally, we have the government will also encourage the libraries maintained by these local bodies, voluntary agencies, Mahila Mandals, etc. So, this component is another area is important, which need to be considered while forming a state policy. Considering these all issues accepted in these were accepted by the draft state policy of public library and information services. It has been felt that it was felt necessary to have a comprehensive library legislation in each state and union territory. When we have the state policy, we make it as a library legislation for the states and union territories. So, next is why we need a library legislation. Library legislation is very important and is needed to fulfill the fundamental idea that freedom, prosperity, and the development of the society, and for the individuals to have the fundamental human values. So, these are the things which make the library legislation a very important and needful. These cannot be achieved like the freedom, prosperity, and development of the society cannot be achieved without the availability of the libraries. So, there are always the values which can be attained through well informed citizens who will be shaping through the utilization of the public libraries. So, there is always a need for the library legislation because it is recognized that all over the world that education, including the provision of free public libraries, is the responsibility of the government at the national, state, and local levels. So, this all creates the need for the library legislation. In addition to this, there are certain other things which makes the library legislation important. These include that library legislation is needed as it will constitute a proper administrative and supervisory body with executive powers. Then we have that it will also provide a well organized library system for the state level, district level, and up to the remote village level with free access to all the citizens. So, if we have the library legislation, we can reach out to the level of the remote villages to provide the free access to all the citizens, all the people in those villages. The library's legislation is also needed to provide a steady and permanent source of finance to the libraries, because if finance is always a problem for the libraries. So, if we have the proper library legislation, it will help in finding out a source of income or source of the finance for these libraries, the public libraries. It will also maintain standards in the library services. So, there will be standardization, there will be uniformity of rules, regulations in the libraries around the country. It will be also help in meeting the objectives and remain accountable, like for the auditing purpose. Later on, when we have got the finance and other there should be accountability attached to it. So, library legislation can enforce that kind of accountability and make it as obligatory for these libraries. So, this is why the library legislation is required. Next, we will be discussing about the components of the library legislation. There are 10 major components which can be identified in the library legislation. The first one is the preamble. The preamble of the Act is the main component of the library legislation. It spells out the objectives of the library legislation, and therefore, it needs to be very precise and explicit. So, preambles gives every information, the definition, whatever the parts and the structure it will form, the preamble will have all those things in it. The second component of library legislation is the state level authority. What authority will be defined, that means the Act should have a provision for the constitution of a board at the state level, state library authority. So, the constitution will be that at the state level we can define what will be the defined board or the members of this legislation. Next is the ministry in charge of the libraries, that should be the state library authority with the duty of implementing the Act. That means what kind of ministry or authorities will be there for implementing this Act. It will be his or her duty to supervise and promote the improvement of the library service and provided by the library authorities, and to secure proper discharge of their functions. And in addition to this, it shall be his statutory duty to establish, equip, administer a state library system providing comprehensive and efficient library service free of charge to all the citizens in the state. Next very important component of the library legislation is the chief executive of the state. So, in this Act, the chief executive at state level shall be either the director of the public libraries, who should have an who will be an information science professional. So, the director shall supervise and control the public library system of the state with the guidance of the state library authority. So, this chief executive of state is very important component who will be taking care of all the other components. Next is the network of the libraries. The Act should provide for establishment and functioning of public libraries as a pyramidal structure. Pyramid means a hierarchical structure from the village level or even a hamlet level to the state level via the district covering the towns and tehsils, etc. So, there is a requirement of network of libraries as a component. Next important component is the financial clause. The act should spell out clearly the financial sources to ensure a regular flow of the funds and their deployment. This means that there should be a provision in the act to collect the library cess, which I already explained that there need to be a library cess which will be the part of the taxes from all possible sources. So, Dr. S. R. Ranganathan, when coined the library legislation of India, he advocated for the provision of library cess in the Models Act. He incorporated this provision of library cells in all the acts he had drafted in his lifetime. The advisory committee for the public libraries, headed by Shri K.P. Sinha, also examined this issue and opined that in spite of a strong body of opinion against the library cess to be taken, the committee has come to the conclusion that only a cess can provide a stable base for the library finance. Otherwise, libraries cannot sustain without having the cess, because generally what happens is that in a year the finance comes, the government gives some grants, and next year the grants are not there. So, to maintain the proper financial availability, the cess is very important component, and it is to be recognized that the levy of the library cess is essential for a planned and systematic growth of an authority through assured and financial resources. So, this is one of the component, and moving ahead to another component is manpower. As you can see on the screen, manpower provides a provision which is made to create a cadre of the state library service, and all members of the said service should be the government servants, and their recruitment and condition services should be as per the provision of the Constitution of India, which I told that the Article 309 is there for making this provision. So, it will have the government employees in the libraries. Then next, another component to be discussed is about the accountability. The activities and accounts of the public library system shall be open to public inspection. This means that they can be supervised, or it can be inspected by any public authority as per the official audit rules of Government of India. Then we have registration of books as very important component of the libraries legislation, which means that every book or periodical published in the state will be under the obligation of depositing it under the legal deposits rules. So, everything which has been published as a book or periodical needs to be deposited as a legal deposit. So, that component is being added in the library legislation. Finally, the last component is the rules. Rules should be made by the state library authority for all the sections and for smooth functioning administration and control of the offices and the staff. So, rules is the final component, the last component of the library legislation, which gives a clear structure, clear framework how the public libraries will work under the state provision. So, what we have discussed, let us sum it up, that library and information service is a very crucial factor in the national development for meeting library learning needs of the masses around the country or any nation. And if we want to make a nation build up, we need to have the library legislation and state policy, a pure formed state policy for the libraries. The State Public Library Act, that a public library system should be created, should be sustained and prompted, ensuring a smooth financial flow with properly governed and managed to provide modern library services to all citizens of the country. Overall, state policy for library information service should cover the administrative systems of all the levels, and we need to propose the library networks, we need to provide the best of the library services, render the best of the library services, we need to have the human resource development, and the final component is the financial sources for the public libraries, which is very important component to be framed under the library legislation. So, I feel you have understood what the library legislation is, what are the areas of the library legislation, what is the basic need, why the library legislation is required, what are the components of library legislation, and why it is required to build a strong nation and have the public libraries around the country. Thank you.